And we're going live. So you're going to make sure all that other stuff's working, and we're going to get ready to make this happen, right, Randy?
I certainly hope so, but you know what?
I just got an indication that it's working. So, hey, everybody, welcome to Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. Our sponsor is the Elder Law Firm out of Greensboro, North Carolina. If you have a need to help the people that the elders in your life to be safer and help them manage their estates and prepare themselves as they transition through that next phase of life, you probably need to talk to the Elder Law Firm. They're good people out of Greensboro, North Carolina. I'll drop their phone number in the chat so you can find it. So yeah. Randy, do you want to explain to our audience what we're doing different today, buddy?
Yeah, I'm trying to bring up the entire post that you have. Did you go live on LinkedIn, by the way? That's what I'm looking for. And you're muted right now. So if you've not done the live on LinkedIn, then I want to check on that. And hopefully you're able to do that. So anyway, yeah, Randy Wooden with Goodwill Industries of Northwest North Carolina. I run our professional center. Back in April, or was it maybe March, April of 2020? Teddy and I got together, got the bright idea to start a talk show talking about job hunting related topics. And it's kind of morphed from that to, well, it still include that, but also now professional development and some other, I guess, business oriented topics. We've got some really cool guests lined up in the next couple, 3 months. So, but that said, if you have guests that you think would add value, good topics, good guests, then we'd love to have a conversation with them, talk a little bit more about that. We also have a sponsor as well. And, I think we all know folks, if not our own relatives, we know of others who have elder care issues and dealing with aging family members and friends and relatives. So elder law, they can certainly help with that. So that's where we are. Teddy, I think you're still muted. Are you still muted?
I am no longer muted, buddy.
You are no longer muted. But
hey, I got 30 seconds to introduce myself as I struggle with this change we made today, trying to accommodate our special guest. But for those who don't know me, I'm Teddy Burriss. I'm a LinkedIn strategist, trainer, and coach for Burriss Consulting. We love to help people who want to get more business value out of LinkedIn. But Randy, go ahead and did you already explain what happened to our special guest for today?
No, we haven't, not yet, but I am going to share as I'm talking. I'm going to share with my own tribe on LinkedIn what we're doing today. So here's the deal. Orielle Hope, she's the HR director with Salem College. She agreed to be on our show. We had a scheduling conflict. She did. And so what it meant was we either had to find another guest at the 11th and a half hour or just record it. And so we elected to record Orielle's conversation. And I'll talk just real briefly about this. Orielle has a long background in human resources, and she herself has been a recent job hunter. The job at Salem College is relatively very new for her. But also having an HR background, I really wanted to dig in to understand how the HR function in companies, how they've changed a bit over time, thanks to COVID, thanks to technology, thanks to the Great Resignation. So we're going to cover a lot of the tips she can share from her perspective on job hunting, but then also the other side of the desk and how HR engages with candidates as well as employees. How do you retain them? How do you keep them motivated? How do you create corporate culture in a virtual environment? So we'll cover all those topics. If you have questions, comments, put them in the chat box, and we'll try to address as best we can as we go through this. And her name is Orielle Hope, Orielle Hope, Orielle Hope, and she is on LinkedIn and very active there, as well as active in the HR community. So Teddy, I've said my piece. I think we've set the ground rules here, and we're ready to roll.
Cool. All right, man. I'm gonna kill my video and I'm gonna play the recording. think I can do this, Randy. You know, Randy, why don't you go ahead and introduce our special guest, buddy?
I'm happy to. And it's a returning guest, by the way. So Orielle Hope joins us. And Orielle, you've done a lot in your career. You've been the SHRM president of our local chapter. But I dare say perhaps your greatest career accomplishment was being the very first guest
That's right.
on Lunch with Randy and Teddy almost 2 years ago.
94 shows ago.
94. Believe it or not. How about that? You had no idea that was your crowning achievement, did you?
No, I didn't, and but that's special, and I'm honored. So,
Well, let's get right to it. Our guest today is Orielle Hope, and Orielle is the Human Resources Director at Salem College. So we're going to cover some topics today. And Orielle brings a unique perspective, having been a job hunter yourself not long ago. So you've seen the search and what COVID and technology has done to impact that. You've seen it from the candidate side, but you've also lived a life in the HR field, and you've seen changes and how HR adapts to change and how they engage, not just with candidates, but also with employees, with your own folks. And so we're going to talk that. But before we dive in, Orielle, why don't you introduce yourself in a little more detail?
absolutely. Again, my name is Orielle Hope, and I am Director of Human Resources and Benefits at Salem Academy and College. I'm so excited to be here back with you guys again, and again honored to learn that I was the first about 2 years ago in this very necessary platform. And just a little bit about me. I have been a human resources professional for over 14 years. I am a certified human resources professional. I have experience in general human resources practices with strategic planning, quality management, and corporate compliance. So I do have a broad perspective. Training and development is something that I specialize in as well, and also including diversity initiatives. So just well-rounded human resources and very, very passionate. And as Randy had said before, I do stay very active in our state and local Society for Human Resource Management organizations.
And also, you and I have had the pleasure of tag teaming a few different speaking engagements back in the day when we actually used to get out of the office. Remember those days?
We sure did. And you know what's unique about that, Randy? If we rewind all the way back, I never thought that I would be at Salem College, but one of our engagements was at the Women's Empowerment Conference for Salem College. So that
we did at least a couple of those.
We sure did. So I think I still have pictures.
I think I joined you guys there a few times as well with Allison.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep. All good. Hey, I always ask the why question, Orielle, and there's always whether it's a single moment or just experiences you had, but what's the why that has really motivated and driven you to stay engaged and really pursue, and I can tell you dig it. I mean, HR, it's got headaches like all jobs do, but it's very fulfilling and rewarding, and you've really been a great example of that for folks. What's your why for what you do?
People, the employees, and I don't think I've changed my stance on that. Just making sure that employees get the best experience possible. And if I can contribute to that, that is rewarding for me. So just making sure that people understand their policies, procedures, just how to navigate the workday. A lot of people, of course, when you're hired, you're so excited. You're not paying attention to that employee handbook, not one bit. You're really paying attention to it in times of need. So my goal has always been to help employees understand those policies and procedures initially, and then just be there as a liaison throughout their workday. So that's my why, people. Yeah,
people. And I dare say, Teddy, you're in the same boat, and same with me, the impact we can have to help people get where they want to go and to work through their challenges. So we've got a lot of turf to cover, but first, Teddy, what you got?
I was just saying, the only thing is, I don't know where my employee handbook is. I'll have to go find my HR person and ask her.
Case in point. That's why HR is necessary.
You need to have one, Teddy. Got to keep yourself in check, man.
Right.
Hey, Orielle, you've had a unique perspective here. Like I've said, you've just recently been a job hunter yourself.
Yeah.
And so you've seen that process. So let's talk a little bit about your journey and some of the tips and things you can share. Again, keeping in mind, you also wear that HR hat. So you probably have your antenna up for certain things that maybe what I'll call the regular job hunter may not have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, help us out there.
Absolutely. I was about 2 years ago, right before the pandemic, my employment ended and it was unexpected. And of course, I, like any other job seeker, had to figure out, okay, what do I do next? So, you know, I went through all of those emotions as everyone else. I'll be very transparent. I was concerned. I was a little depressed for a moment. But for me, all of that ended quite fast. And I'll tell you why. I really didn't have time to dwell, because 2 weeks later, since I was unemployed, I became a caregiver to my younger brother who had to have a major surgery. So I had to kind of take off and head up north for a while and take care of him. So it kind of helped take care of him, but it took my focus off of me for a moment. But what I learned in that, and the reason why I'm sharing that, is because even though at one of my darkest moments, you know, where I really wanted to focus on me, I wanted to hide in the closet and cry, I couldn't, because someone else needed me. And for me, that's where I turned my, I wouldn't say failure, but I would turn my unemployment into a period of service for a while. So during that time, while I was taking care of him, I still didn't give up. I said, okay, I've got to go ahead and start seeking employment, putting my resume out there. But then I also had to think, well, wait a minute. What are some things that you need to accomplish for you that will make you a better HR professional as you re-enter the workforce? Mm-hmm. So during that time, I really started to do self-reflection, soul searching, started to hone my leadership skills, because as an HR professional, you know, you may, even though you may have your core group that you supervise, along with the entire workforce, you also have to realize, well, you may not be perfect, and you have to take constructive criticism or things that you may have learned about yourself and figure out how you can improve those things and turn those into a positive. So that's what I did during the time I was out. I really started reflecting on me, making sure that I was able to take some leadership courses that were online. And again, this is all during the start of the pandemic. So it was really a time where I had to be creative and crafty in my job search, and then also be open to new experiences. So I will say during that downtime, I took the time to build my skills. I also decided, now I've been an HR professional at that time for over 12 years, and I had been so busy all the time working and volunteering that I realized I didn't get certified. So one of the things that I really wanted to do was focus on me and get my certification, and I did. I did that during that time frame, but that was later on in the year, probably in the fall of the year. But all of that time that I had out of work, I made sure that I used my time wisely to, again, build my competency, study for my certification, but learn as much as I can, learn more best practices in human resources. And then also I started watching the news. I had never watched the news. I never had time, didn't care, because every day in HR, it's news, news, news. So what I did was I started watching just any news outlet to just, you know, see what else is going on in the world, to see what I missed. The only thing I regret is I did not get back into the soaps, watching soaps, but I felt that would really stunt my growth. So I did not watch soaps during that time.
Well, I know, and the Patriots had an off year, so you didn't miss much that first year. We didn't do that. By the way, Teddy, she's a Patriots fan, so just tread lightly with us, will you?
I'm good with that. So Orielle, that's powerful. You didn't just go look for a job and you know, watch the news. You went to learn. And I think that's one of the aspects of a job search process that I think a lot of people miss out on. I think it's not just a job search process. It's just one of the things that a lot of people, I'll get to that later in life. I'll get to that later in life. And then all of a sudden life's moved by and you're like, dang, I should have done that. So kudos to you for doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've encountered at the professional center I've encountered somebody who's, I'll call our age, and I know we're not all the three the same age, but basically over age 40, okay, who has been in the workplace for 20 plus years, but who had dropped out of college for whatever reason. They got a job, they, whatever, ran out of money, you name it. And they've worked their career, but they've never gone. And I've had some that are maybe 10, 12 hours away from graduation 20 years later, and they still haven't completed that degree. And then on the one hand, they say, well, I can't get a job because I don't have a degree. I'm thinking, dude, you've had what, 20, 25 years to take a night class or two. And so that's one of the things that and I know you, when you put your HR hat on, you're going to ask is, hey, what have you been doing during the time you've been out?
Right.
And you better have an answer other than watching soaps.
Right. And
Dr. Phil, as Steady would say.
Right. And Randy, just to interject, I was asked that question later on when I began to job search. That was one of the questions. Employers wanted to know, well, what have you been doing with your time? And I was proud to tell them what I was doing because I actually had done something. And part of that was in enhancing my HR knowledge. So that was all the truth. I didn't waste time. I didn't miss a training. I think I participated in every training that was offered to me. LinkedIn has a wonderful learning platform that I also paid for. I didn't care how much it was. It was an investment in me. And I began taking those classes. And what I learned is they don't just have HR classes. They have classes for just about every area. So I just kept building my skill set. And that's one thing that I would always encourage any job seeker to do. Don't waste time. Every minute is valuable, and what you do can help you. So take advantage of those online platforms. And there are reduced rates for a lot of things. So you just have to look and kind of see. And then also what I would say is get past your insecurities, because life happens to all of us. Some of us will lose jobs, some of it will be voluntary, some will be involuntary, but get past those insecurities. And the reason why I'm telling you that is because if you stay stuck in your insecurities, you'll let things get inside your mind, and you know who you are. Outside of your job, you are someone's mother, father, sister, brother, aunt, uncle. People adore you. And that's really important for you to know, is because you can't lose your self-worth when you're thinking about things that may have happened and an unfortunate or untimely end of employment. So I just wanted to be sure that I mentioned to you that get past those insecurities, take the time you need to deal with it and process it. But once you process it, get back up and keep going, because you know what you're worth, but do it with continuous learning in mind and with an end goal to win.
Talking with Orielle Hope. She's the HR director at Salem College, and Orielle has herself been a job hunter recently, and has been talking about her journey and some tips for you. But also, we're going to pivot later on and get more in detail about the HR function within organizations and how they have perhaps changed over the years, especially in light of COVID, or just the whole great resignation, and how do they engage with candidates? How do they engage with their existing employees? How do they keep their employees? How do you create the corporate culture when everybody's on Zoom, and that can create some challenges. So we'll cover some of that. Orielle, you mentioned in your talking points that you sent to me a while back about networking and networking online. What have you found good, bad, and ugly with that? How's that work for you?
Okay, so what I mean by that, networking online, and again, I've always been active and social on LinkedIn, and I found that to be very helpful, especially during the time that I was a job seeker. And what I mean by that is when you get out and look online, you can connect with people specifically if it's a job, a place of employment that you're looking for. Connect with folks who work there so that you can start learning about the culture. There may also be a company page for that particular organization, and that's how you can learn more, or actually go online and visit websites. But really, if you use social media, if you use LinkedIn, even Facebook and Instagram, and those are the only ones I really use, but Twitter is helpful as well. But connect with like people or others that you're interested in. Even when you're job searching, you might say, I don't want to do this anymore. Let me think about that. And as you're thinking about what you may want to do or how you want to start over, connect with that type of group or that person so that you can learn a little bit more. And that's what I mean, Randy and Teddy, when I talk about using online resources to network.
Yeah, Teddy?
So, Orielle, one of the things that I've been ranting about for years is you'll never find that different job until after, for the most part, until after you meet someone who plays in that sandbox with those toys.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I definitely agree.
Learning about an organization is key, not just from their website, but I think to your point, Orielle, in talking with people who work there or maybe who used to work there. Sometimes you're not going to, just from experience from my clients, sometimes you're not necessarily always going to get a willing volunteer
That's true.
of info if they're at the company, because they may not trust you.
Yeah.
But
that's true.
You can also conduct filtered searches to see who used to work there, who may be, for example, a second level connection or even a first.
Right.
And because they're not still employed there, they may feel more at ease in being more candid.
Right.
Again, good, bad, or indifferent, but information is power when put to use. And if you've got that, you've got more than maybe the next person who's interviewing.
Yeah.
All right. So now you've applied. So now what? What happens? You hit submit. Or you flip the switch, Teddy. You still have your phone back? You know, I saw you doing a little video with your phone, and
you want my bag phone? You want my desk phone? You want my mobile phone, Randy? Which phone do you need, buddy?
Teddy attaches the little note to the pigeon, and he lets it out his window, and it flies the resume magically to your desk.
And I bet it gets there.
I've hit submit. What happens now? What goes on now? Not just from a job hunter standpoint and what you should do, but also I'm really interested on the other side of that, from the HR side.
Yeah. Okay.
Tell us the secrets, Orielle. The secrets.
Yeah. Spill your guts now.
Okay. Well, you know, we HR folks have a code, so I can't tell you everything, but I can give you a little insight there.
Just talk quieter that way. If you talk quiet, I don't think they can hear you. So just do that. Very, very quiet. There we go.
So from the job seeker standpoint, after you click send, then your nerves start going. You know, you start getting the bubble guts. At least I did, because now you're like, okay, how long do I wait? But I will tell you, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Send them out. Just start sending them out. I mean, I remember when I was job seeking, I sent out resumes. I mean, I had to make a decision, and at the time, our Triad area, we didn't have a lot of jobs. You know, and we may have had a lot of jobs, but there were a lot of people competing too. So you always have to realize that you're not the only one. So you do have to think about things to set yourself apart. But what I also did was I wasn't afraid to just send it out. And I spoke to my husband and I said, you know, I'm going to start sending resumes out to Virginia, so we'll have to figure this out. And of course, we had just bought our home maybe 4 years ago, so that would have been something for us to really think about. We did have to start thinking, okay, well, what are we going to do? If you get a job there, are you going to live there part of the week? Are you going to stay here? So there are a lot of life changes and conversations that you have to have if you have, you know, a spouse too or significant other. But on the flip side, from the employer's side of things, when you know, a lot of employers will use, well, of course, we use different platforms to recruit. So one of them, you know, is Indeed or ZipRecruiter, Glassdoor. There's just so many portals, our own websites. But the reason why I'm saying that is because once you click submit, then your resume goes through that tunnel. And then after that, it's forwarded to whoever is on that email address. So it may be a general email address. It may go straight to the hiring manager. But the delay sometimes, because if the position is very, very popular, sometimes we can get up to a day. I know I've seen it, maybe at least 100 resumes a day. And a lot of HR departments, especially in the recruiting area, are not that big. You may actually have a department of 1, you may have a department of 3, but at the same time that we're recruiting and looking for candidates, we're also handling questions about benefits, questions about leave time. You know, there's stuff that happens, there's disciplinary issues. So what I'm saying is there's a lot that goes into why you may not have been responded to until about 3 weeks later, but you're competing with a lot of people. And with that competition, we're looking for who's qualified. What did the job description say? Did your resume match exactly with those knowledge, skills, and abilities that the required qualification section?
Let me ask you, let me hop in real quick, because whenever I hear that, my little alarm goes off.
Uh-huh.
I always like to try to dispel the myth, and I'd love you to speak to this. There's a couple things going on, but one is the whole idea that says, okay, there's software that's going to do the work of a human, and based on the number of keywords that match, your resume will get thrown in the trash and HR will never see it. I believe that to be largely a myth for the most part. Technology can do that. There are other ways that resumes can be kind of put in the preferred. There may be a scoring system based on answers to questions, but ultimately it's a set of eyeballs that still needs to review it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then that points to networking. So again, I'm just asking for validation on this thing, but anytime I have an HR person that, is on the show, I love to ask the question, same with recruiters, and that is the power of a name drop. So if Teddy were to email you and say, hey, Orielle, I don't know much about the position, but Randy Wooden had mentioned that he'd applied for the blah, blah, blah position over there. We're breaking up, or my phone's breaking up, man. I'm saying, who is that? Get off my phone. No, the idea here is if he sends that email to you and he doesn't say Randy's the greatest thing, he doesn't, he just says Randy's applied. Could you take a second look at his application? What kind of weight does that tend to carry if it comes from outside the company like Teddy, or even inside the company, maybe one of your peers or your boss or your boss's boss? What kind of weight does that carry?
Yeah, I think it carries a little weight because it is who you know, and that gave that person an insight. So those hundreds of applications are coming over, but Teddy knows Orielle Hope, who's over HR. So of course, sending that directly to me, that puts my eye on it. And of course, I'm going to look at it and make sure. I'm not going to pass it along if it doesn't meet criteria, but I am going to look at it. But to that qualifications, of course, those are there for a reason, but it's looking at the whole picture too. And so sometimes companies may pay for that software, but I think with budgets now, I don't think everybody's paying for that high-tech software. I really, truly think that people are looking to make sure that they have the most qualified person for the position. But a lot of that, the resume is one component. So make sure you always match it up, but be ready to speak to that, because if you get that, if that email is forwarded into human resources and we see it and we can identify it and then we pass it on to that hiring manager, be ready to speak to everything else, because you may not have everything, but you may have something like it. And that something like it is what if you have that opportunity, you definitely want to be able to speak up and sell yourself at that point and talk about why you would be the best candidate for this position. So I definitely think it does help who you know. And if you can forward that, getting an email address is always helpful. And even picking up the phone and contacting human resources. Now, sometimes, again, you may not get that person on the phone, but I would keep trying. I would definitely keep trying. I've had people do that to me. And it does become a bit annoying, but then I have to look at it and say, well, Orielle, you didn't call them back. So that's why they're calling you again. So sometimes you can, for us HR folks, just pick up the phone, and try to respond to a call if we can, or at least forward it to that person that can better help them.
I'm going to ask, I know Teddy's going to jump in here with our halfway point. So Teddy, be ready for that. Orielle, I'm going to prep you for the next question.
Okay.
All right. And it's this. You just mentioned about calling and perhaps leaving a voice message. So walk me through, and be thinking about this, walk me through, if I applied for a job, walk me through when is it appropriate to follow up with a phone call, and assuming that I get voicemail, probably the general HR general voicemail, because they're not going to say, you need Orielle Hope. They don't want to divulge your name. They're just going to, I'll put you through to HR. So now I'm in the HR voicemail system. Don't know who to ask for, anything like that. What should I say? What are some key phrases I should say as the candidate on that voicemail to hopefully prompt somebody to pull me out of the stack versus saying, who is this whack job? All right, so Teddy,
Yeah.
Teddy,
And
let me
before
go
I
ahead
do-
and have you do your thing, and we'll throw it back to Orielle.
Yeah, Orielle, get ready for that one. But before I do the 30-minute break, Orielle, Randy and I believe I can speak for Randy, generally would not refer someone to you for a specific role if you're looking for someone who does education in, in this space, and this person is only a dust bunny collector. We're not going to forward that person to you. We'll coach that person on how to do that. Hey, this year on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy, and Randy and I both appreciate the Elder Laws firm out of Greensboro, their support for the show. Who's important to you, and how do you plan to honor your responsibilities to them? That's what the Elder Law firm is all about, helping you to make sure that you put the right plan together for their estate to protect what really matters for them. So if you have people in your life who need that kind of help and you want to help them with that, call the Elder Law firm at 336-396-4551 for your estate and elder care planning. So back to you, buddy.
Yeah. So, all right, I've applied. And so how much time should go by before I follow up with a phone call and I get the general voicemail box in HR? Or even if they give me your name and I get your voicemail, what should I say in assuming I don't get to talk to you? And even if I do get to talk to you, what should I say? Should these be the same messages that I deliver or different? Or help coach folks that are really perplexed, because this one is a biggie.
Right, you're right.
Yeah.
Very good question. One thing I would say first is most job postings may have a deadline of when the application process will close. So I would probably first keep that deadline in mind. So if I apply for something today and I see that the deadline is not until February 15th, I probably would wait a little bit closer to that deadline, because then that's when HR is going to, most likely be focusing on the selection period of who will be selected for the interview. But with that saying, it's always good, you can pick up the phone. I would go back to Randy, something that I've heard you speak on over the years is that 30-second elevator speech. I don't know if that has changed the terminology, but I would always be ready to have a brief introduction ready for that phone call, because again, time is of the essence there. There's not a lot of time to spend on the phone with you, but I would just get straight to the point, be as courteous and professional as possible, introduce yourself, let them know what position you're seeking, let them know you have submitted a resume and you would like to find out if there's any way that you can be considered for an interview. So I would keep it brief with those few buzzwords, but and then just wait and just listen and just hear the response. You may get the response of, okay, well, thank you so much. Your name again is, so be ready to repeat your information, because at that point we're writing it down in HR, because we're thinking, oh wow, okay, which position is that? Okay, where did we post that? Let me go back and find. Wonder how many folks, what did you say your name is again? So we're just trying to fact find and get all the information so that we have your information and we can look at it and then forward that on to the hiring manager. Because again, most companies, we're eager to fill positions. We have to fill positions and we have a deadline of which we need to get that position filled by. Yeah. But again, I mentioned all of the other stuff that comes with human resources as well. So you actually giving a phone call is helpful. Because it helps us look at, to go back and pull that and then hone in on your skills and qualifications and your work experience and see if it would be a right match.
Yeah. So, and don't call 10 times, I think.
No, I wouldn't call 10 times. If you, now, if you don't hear from someone, yeah. I would spread it out a bit and, maybe an email, and don't sound annoyed. One thing that I find is sometimes jobs, even though it can get frustrating. Remember now, you're competing with other people, lots of other candidates, and you've got to sell yourself. So don't ruin your opportunity by being rude. I've called 5 times and no one has spoke to me. Well, you know what? You may have to call 5 more times, but we're listening to that and we're remembering because we're thinking, would that be the person that we want to represent us as far as customer service? how far does their patience go? So, be very kind when you're leaving those messages, and extend a little grace to human resources as well, because just as we're filling one position, we've got about 10 others that we're looking to fill too. And the phone is always ringing.
Yeah, and just as an observation, especially at what I will call the lower wage positions that maybe don't require extensive skills in very specific areas, a lot of this goes to enthusiasm and who wants it.
Yeah.
And too often, I think people are afraid to hear no.
Yeah.
And so they feel safer behind the keyboard and then just sit back and wait. But for the person who has the guts and the initiative to make that call and to leave a concise, professional sounding message, that could be the edge, just like that email from Teddy that causes you or HR to say, let me at least take a look at this fella and see what he's about. And as long as I'm reasonably close to a fit, there's a pretty good chance I'll at least get an interview. And that's the biggest frustration for job hunters at all levels is I can't seem to hear back. I can't seem to get an interview when I feel like I'm qualified. So all good stuff. Anything else you wanted to share about as far as the actual interview itself? As a candidate, that is,
Hey, Orielle, before you go there, I want to play off what you just said about, 30-second commercial and, show a little grace. And Ray, this might be a show that we have, a wordologist join us and never say, I want to be. When you're telling someone who you are, never say, I want to be a professor of dust bunnyology. You say, I am a dust bunny professor of dust bunnyology. I am. I mean, that changes the whole way you think when I'm presenting myself to you. Oh, he wants to be that. He ain't quite that. And the other thing that you said that really resonated with me is that when I'm calling you, maybe for the second or third time, I've got to be empathetic to you because you're a busy woman. I mean, you got a lot of stuff going on. I'm not the only thing you have going on. So this is a leadership skill. When I start with empathy with that phone call or empathy with that email, knowing that you're busy, not overly, Orielle, I know life is really sucky, No, just be truly, sincerely empathetic. It'll change and it'll give you the energy to want to read a little bit more of what I say.
Right. I agree with that. I do.
Yeah. Hey, you mentioned in your notes about knowing your worth and understanding the salary negotiations. So I just had this question the other day and I answered it, but again, I love it when I have an HR person who can validate this.
Okay.
So for most all positions, and I'll say all positions, when or is it ever appropriate for the candidate to ask about salary?
I think in that initial phone call with human resources is appropriate. And I'll tell you why. First of all, employers want to know if they're able to afford you. So if you do get that phone call, that first initial screening phone call, you do need to go ahead and just have that conversation because you don't want to waste your time, first of all, and you don't want to waste the employer's time. So I think initially, if you get that phone call with human resources and you're able, if they're asking you, if they ask that question, well, do you have any more questions for me? Yes, you may ask the question, have you all considered a salary range for this position? Or have you, what have you all figured out for your budget for this position? That's a good way to open the conversation. And if you may hear, well, we really don't discuss that until we move further along in the process. You may hear all types of things and it's okay, but at least you raise the question. You may also hear, well, we don't typically speak about that right now, but what I can tell you is that we are, our budget right now does allow between 45,000 and 56,000. So, they may give you just a range. I mean, it just depends on a company's policies, but you can always ask the question. Just be ready for if HR is kind of telling you, well, we really don't discuss that now, accept that at this point and just say, okay, well, and then do your research. And the reason why I say do your research is I've had plenty of candidates talk to me about that they've done their research and they see that, you know, the market industry is this. That's fine too. But now let me just tell you one thing about your research. Your research is good for the moment of when you researched it. And if you're using salary.com, Indeed, Glassdoor, ZipRecruiter, whatever sites that you pay scale, when you go online, that information is only as good as the respondents to their survey. And it could change. You could look up something 1 minute, and then in the next 5 minutes, you can go back and do another search, and the numbers will change a little bit. The reason why I'm sharing that with you is because that means that your data may not always be accurate. And you also have to consider that companies, depending on what they are, you know, what type of industry they're in, they have different research guides that come out annually or every 2 years that shows them the market industry for those positions at this time. So if you're in senior living, there may be some type of manual. If you're in mental health care, there might be one. If you're in higher education, there may be one. So I just wanted to make sure that you understood, even though you're doing your research, do not go in there with a big head thinking that I got you. I know what the range is or what the going rate is. And then every company has a budget. And so they know what they can afford. So if you're within what they can afford and you meet the qualifications, you know, you have a better chance. So just wanted to give you that little tip about knowing your worth, but don't be so confident that your research is the end all.
And Randy, just an FYI, Randy, you can do all the research you want. I know what your position is worth on this show, and I appreciate that you do it. And we're not changing the budget.
Orielle, you surprised me. Honestly, you did. You did. You surprised. Now, a lot of times at the entry level, lower paying positions, HR right away, the recruiter will come out and say, this position pays X. Are you still interested in talking? But when you get into the nuances of the professional realm, historically anyway, the common practice is for the candidate not to bring it up, is to instead build value. Because if you do bring it up early on, then it sends the signal. It says, don't waste my time, you know, that kind of a thing. So has that changed? Has that mindset changed now that it's a candidate market?
So? I think it has. And I'm looking back throughout the years, and I'm also thinking about my own job search during that time. You know, I probably had a little edge because being human resources too, you know, you never think that you're going to be on the other side of the table. Well, I was, and that was a very humbling experience, but I had to be creative, but I also had to be confident because I'm thinking, well, you know, I'm human resources. I know how this works. So I have to be crafty in what I'm asking too, in order for it to be a win-win, because the bottom line is I definitely want to know if this is in my range, so that I can make some considerations. Because another thing I will tell you, you know, you may think that you may know your worth and you may know what you got paid before, but you also got to look at your circumstance. And you know, I think I said this before, we all have bills that have to be paid. And at some point, even though your worth may be over here, you may have to consider what you need to take for what you can work for right now in order to make sure that your end needs are met. So does that mean you're settling? No, but there are ways to get around that. You can accept a salary and in that negotiation say, you know, I would love to, if we can reconsider this maybe 6 months down the line. Now, of course, Randy, this is more on the professional lines too, right. But that is a way to do that. And people are open because first of all, sometimes you want to try before you totally buy. And, you know, even Amazon Prime will send you, they have a market now where you can, if you order clothing or something, that they'll let you try the product first for a few days and then consider if you want to buy it. So that, you know, that's sort of that introductory period as well. So, you know, I wouldn't say that, I think it's different people. It just depends on what organization you're speaking to, and especially with human resources, but hopefully you will get that empathetic one who will, you know, have that conversation with you if they can. What you have to remember is human resources is a liaison. Mm-hmm. We are here to assist. We are a resource. So, you know, again, there are established budgets for every department, and we have to hire within that range. So yes, something may be up for negotiation, but you also have to be willing to negotiate.
I got you. Now we have a little over 10 minutes left in our time with you here. And in a few, I'm going to ask you to, kind of give us a summary, or what are some takeaways you'd like folks to have.
Okay.
So let's pivot now, if we could, to talking about human resources. We've talked about how they engage with candidates. What about now for internal employees? How is COVID? How is this great resignation and the whole shift in the marketplace, and the advent of technology and the prevalence of Zoom, and you throw in a little salt and pepper, a little A1 sauce, and you stir it all up, and now you've got a whole pot of new stuff. HR's changed over the years, and you've been in HR for many years. So let's talk that. What are some changes that you have seen as related to how HR engages with their own employees?
Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Meet. Those have all become favorites within the last 2 years. But as far as engagement, flexibility comes to mind. And I'll say that because, and this is across the organization, period. But during the pandemic, companies did have to think differently of how to communicate, of how to keep their workforce healthy. And that's where virtual learning or virtual meetings boomed, I'll say. And for that, what HR has had to do, we had to think of a whole new way of recruiting and accepting, once the selection process is done, accepting documents for onboarding. So if you did not have a good, here's a human resource information system to obtain that information, then over the last 2 years, you had to get very creative in how to receive information. So we really had to rely on technology on our end from the company, but also as a job seeker, you had to rely on technology too, because the systems that you were using for those days of going to the public library or to Goodwill to assist you with getting those resumes in, that ended for a moment because no one was opening the doors to the public, with good reason, with the pandemic. So it was an opportunity for everyone, both job seekers and employers, to enhance technology. And that's one thing that we had to do, was figure out a way of how we were going to continue to recruit, how are we going to continue to communicate with candidates, how are we going to set up the interviews. So the interview process changed too. And again, all of that went to online platforms, with really having those interviews and having panel interviews too, via Virtual platforms.
Sure. And it did away a bit. Teddy? Yeah, wanted to.
I'll say one of the things I just heard about the other day is about how organizations are changing and adjusting the way they engage with their employees. A large organization in downtown Winston-Salem, I won't name them, starts with the letters RAI. I believe that was the company that sent out a care box to all of their remote employees.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a replacement for being humans together as humans. It was just a way to say, we know that our world has changed, your world has changed, you're working from home with your kids and your laundry and your dogs, et cetera, et cetera. We just want to show you that we care. And it was actually quite an impressive care box.
Yeah, and you know what, you mentioned that. I think back on Facebook last year, I did recall seeing one of my friends. She lives in the Virginia area, but her company, Capital One, did the same thing, and she posted it. And just to see the morale, she was so excited, and other people had posted too. But that does make a difference. So yeah, companies had to think differently in that aspect. Really had to look at who was essential, that had to be at work, and who could work from home. So there were things that came up there too. You had to think about making sure that you were fair in the process. But also with that, just making sure that the employees still felt valued and appreciated during that time. So there were a lot of things that companies had to put in place during the pandemic to make sure that staff knew that they felt valued, and in an effort to retain staff. Because to that point, when the world shifted to virtual learning and virtual and working remotely, then all the employees that were home during that time said, well, if I can get the same amount of work done at home remotely that I could get done in the office, then why do I have to come back to the office? So those were some of the challenges companies had to face too as they reopened and welcomed employees back to the organization. It was also, explaining that, well, yes, but we did that during this time. However, your position does require that you be back on campus or back at the organization. And the thing about that comes also with extensive communication, because you have to make sure that you explain to the employees, this is the reason why your position has to be here. On the flip side, employers also should remember to weigh out those pros and cons and see where there is room for flexibility. Can the job continue to get done remotely? If not fully remotely, can we talk about a compromise in working a few days at home in some of the office?
It's also as it's become tougher and tougher to find good help these days, right? It's tougher to find candidates, and now with the feasibility of working remotely, you could be sitting there in let's say Winston-Salem, but your new hire could be living in Nebraska.
That is true.
So that's opened up a greater talent pool. And let me pivot just a little bit and focus on the corporate culture piece. And it won't take very long, because I do want to get you to summarize here, but how has corporate culture changed, if at all, when I can't sit or I can't stand next to you in the coffee area and talk to you and hang out and walk over to your cube and harass you? How has that changed now that a lot of us are confined to our homes?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I will tell you, for the germaphobe people in the organization, it's great. They love it. Okay. They are like, yes, we should have done this years ago. I don't know why it took them so long to catch up. But for everyone else, it stinks, because it does take away, that social aspect of work and engaging with your peers face to face, that coffee room and water cooler talk. People are more productive, I will say. But seriously, that interaction is necessary, because we do spend so many hours a day with our peers at work. So it has changed. I know one organization that I was at during the pandemic, we really took COVID precautionary measures very seriously. And we did say that, employees, I'm sorry, but you can't hang out in the break room. We can't have clusters of folks together. It's for your own safety. So that took a little getting used to, and especially folks who normally would go into each other's office to talk. But again, we did constant communication. And again, we just kept leaning on the fact of keeping you safe, keeping the environment safe for you to feel comfortable to work in. So it did stink. And again, a lot of things had to be shifted. A lot of Zoom meetings, just a lot of virtual platforms being used for just training. So, it is what it is. And unfortunately, right now we're in a pandemic that is not going to end anytime soon. So we have to continue to make considerations and think about how we do communicate within the workforce.
Yeah, let's wrap now for a few minutes here. What are some takeaways you'd like folks to have?
Don't give up. Just remember, during your job search, do not give up. Be persistent. Know what it is. Figure out what it is, your end goal, and don't give up on it. It may take, I keep hearing that this is not a race, but a marathon. Apply that. Sometimes you may have to take things slowly and just know that it will happen for you. So don't give up. I would definitely say be ready. And what I mean by that, keep honing, sharpening your skills. I'm not done learning yet. I just recently, the next steps for me, I'm starting on a PhD program within the next month, but that's something I've wanted to do, lifelong learning, and I'm going to accomplish that goal, but it's going to be baby steps. So don't give up. Know your worth, be ready, breathe a little bit, because your nerves will take the best of you, anxiety will, because sometimes you won't get those calls as quickly. What I did to lessen my anxiety during that time, I now had the opportunity to volunteer. I love volunteering at the local food bank, and I really didn't have a chance to do that. But during the time that I was unemployed, I did. I took the time to volunteer and help others, to be of service, because it gave me, first of all, it helped build my confidence, to let me know it helped me still work around people. you take orders. And that was a good thing for me because I'm used to giving orders. So, you know, you're not outside the box. You are not exempt. That's one thing my older brother and I always talk about. You're not exempt. It doesn't matter how high up you are in an organization. It doesn't matter what degrees you have. You're not exempt for things to happen to you. But if they do, you know, just take a step back and relax for a minute, but be ready, breathe a little bit, and make sure that you network and build your network. I am part of a human resources organization along with Randy. And I will say, again, during the time that I was unemployed, I still continue to network virtually with my human resource professionals. And that always keeps the door open for you to learn what's going on, best practices, even see if there's some jobs out there, but just communicate. And then also, did you know that your volunteer experience, if you're part of another organization, even if you volunteer at your church, you know, the work you do for others in a volunteer capacity, you can use that as a reference as well. You know, don't always think you have to use someone. You were supervised in another capacity somewhere. Well, that's a supervisor as well. So don't think that, oh my gosh, they want me to give them a reference from a supervisor. Well, who supervised you when you were stocking food at the food bank?
Yeah,
that's a supervisor as well. So just don't be ready to think outside the box. And then also don't be afraid to, when you're negotiating for salaries, to request your salary, but be prepared to negotiate and have a range in mind.
Got you. Thank you, Orielle. Orielle Hope, HR Director, Salem College. And I see you've got your Salem swag in the back. I can see the logo. There it is. Yep.
Yes.
Absolutely. Orielle, as always, thank you very much. And for all you do for your organization, for SHRM, and just again, value your friendship and great advice today, both from a job seeker standpoint, as well as from the HR perspective, dealing with.
My pleasure. Thank you all for having me. My pleasure.
Absolutely.
Orielle, thank you very much.
Teddy, let's you and me turn, and we'll talk a little bit about what we learned from Orielle today.
Cool. All right, buddy. Randy.
Hey, Teddy.
I love, I'll turn your camera back on, man.
The host has stopped it. So
who would have done that, dude? I mean, exactly. Why would someone do that?
You can hear my voice, but in any event,
I got your back, man. I'm sorry. So
all right.
I love it when Orielle comes in. I love the conversation she has. Do you have a story from that, buddy?
Nothing real long. Just keep it brief. I know we've got just a couple of minutes left, and a couple of takeaways real quick. One was her point that it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and the highs and lows of a job hunt. I mean, we're human, but try to keep the end goal in mind. And just as a side note, despite what some people may think, HR people are human, and the great majority of them really care about what they do. They really truly do, and they're trying to do the best they can. Trust me, they're swamped. And if they don't get back to you on your timeline or whatever, Orielle's point was, if you do follow up with another call, don't sound agitated. Believe me, they're trying to do the best they can. They're only human, just like you and me. So there's that. That's it.
I'm with you, man. I'll just echo that. I know a lot of recruiters, not a lot of HR professionals. And with this thing going on that some people call the great resignation, and some people are calling the great renegotiation, empathy plays a big part of that. So I got to follow up and send Orielle a message and thank her for joining us today. So, hey, look, remember our sponsor, our current sponsor, and we're looking for others, is the elder law firm. So if you need help with, managing those that you're responsible for helping, reach out to the elder law firm to have a conversation. We're appreciative of them being there. Next week, Mary Kay Hunt, M-E-R-I, Mary Kay Hunt will join us in a conversation about transformation. Actually, the title that she gave me is Overcoming the Why Not of Transformation. Mary Kay is a smart woman, really focused on this whole idea of life transformation, career transformation, et cetera, et cetera. So you'll get a lot of value out of the conversation. So join us next week, February 2nd at 11:55 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Randy, good seeing you, buddy. Hey, everybody, we'll see you next week.
All right. Be safe. Take care.